Welcome back. I find myself in between jobs using that as literal rather than a figurative phrase where I finished one job for the day and then I will soon move on to Michael's and close. So I thought in between, since I have a little bit of time, I had fourth block off. Why not look at Birds of Prey, Volume 5, number 3? So let's get into it. I first want to say that in my haste and I think also just brain fog talking about number 2, and I had mentioned a tweet that Kelly Thompson had responded where one of the people on the list that I couldn't read was Onyx, and I was just like, oh, it's Onyx. My brain did not connect that Onyx is Onyx. The fact that I had been talking about Onyx for 3 months, the fact that I was bemoaning the fact that Onyx was forgotten to Josh and asking, where's Onyx? And then Kelly Thompson mentions that Onyx was a possibility, which is an awesome poll. And now that I know that it was a possibility, please bring back Onyx. It shouldn't be on your shoulders, Kelly Thompson, to basically like undo the wrongs that have been done to that character by DC Comics. But I have so much faith in you that you could absolutely do that, that you could bring her back and make people look up who this character is, look up who Orpheus is, and be like, man, this is an awesome character. Because what is she doing right now? Is she just still a gang leader helping out Batman? I don't even know. So fingers crossed. Please, Kelly Thompson, bring Onyx back. Okay, so this is Birds of Prey number 3, Megadeth Part 3. Writer Kelly Thompson, art Leonardo Romero, colorist Jordi Belair. Publisher synopsis. I'm still doing that. Sorry. I'll get back to full synopses, I'm sure. But the first covert mission of the reformed Birds of Prey has established their beachhead in Themyscira. I would almost say on, since it's an island. But what could be so important to Black Canary that she'd risk the wrath of the greatest warriors on Earth? So it's interesting that that was revealed in the beginning, but publishers do as they do, and we are in advance. I will say that let's just start off by saying I love this issue. And I'll be frank and also contrary to myself or contradictory. There's no reason why this issue shouldn't get a 10 out of 10 for me. But I'm going to give it a 9.5 and I will explain why. But it's like a tentative, or it's like it could change 9.5 once we get to the end of this arc. So I'll talk about it. To begin at the beginning, just looking at this beautiful cover, all I can say are like amazing things about the art. And in this case, we have, which I don't remember 2 or 3 doing this, but I love the title itself and how there is actually a bird of prey coming down and reaching one of its talons over the E. It's kind of spray painted using some stencils. We see Wonder Woman in the foreground, and that, of course, foreshadows what is about to happen, the last act of this particular issue, as well as I think gives us, this issue gives us a big setup for something that may happen in number 4. And I'm hopeful that Thompson does not go the way of kind of superhero tropes where superheroes get into fights and then they talk about it. So I'm hoping that maybe they're more reasonable in this particular run where they talk about it and don't have to fight. But you can see the whole team, and the lasso does a great job of highlighting Dinah in the center there. So just amazing right there. And then the art as a whole is also amazing internally. So just thumbs up for me, 10 out of 10. Would recommend, as they say. So we do begin here at Themyscira. It looks like we have an oracle, which I can certainly appreciate, diving into the mythology and classicism and things like that. We find out the vessel is unworthy, which we assume is sin. I do have a question about this character here named Philippus. Philippus with a US ending, if we're going to get into my linguistics and my Latin background, is a masculine ending. And I would expect that it to be Philippa, Philippus, in general, just with how things were way back when. The father would often bestow his own name upon his daughter, but change it to a feminine ending. So Cornelius, if he has a daughter, is most likely going to be Cornelia, that sort of thing. So Philippus is just interesting having that US ending. Do you have questions about that? And this actually led me to think about whether there are or whether there could be, because of their laws, transgendered people on Themyscira. Could there be trans feminine or trans woman on Themyscira? I don't know. And then if someone's transitioning, maybe trans masculine or trans, does that mean that trans men are kicked off of the island? So this was something that I had never even considered, but just because of this US, I'm like, huh, well, maybe Philippus is a trans masculine character. Um, and maybe Themyscira is awesome and very open and keeps all of its trans characters no matter what. So who knows? Fingers crossed. I don't know who's that'd be a question, I guess, for Kelly Thompson. I might be getting in too deep, but yeah, I wonder about kind of the politics of Themyscira. Okay, moving on. Yes. Okay, Harley. I love just that Harley is almost someone with a lot of common sense and that calls you out because they're criticizing her for this plan that now involves kind of a Noah, not a Noah, sorry, a Jonah situation, and everyone riding inside a megalodon to get to Themyscira, and everyone's complaining, but she's absolutely right. You cannot complain when I was the one who came up with the option and you did not help come up with any other options. So even though she's wacky and insane, absolutely call somebody out. You just can't do that. You can't complain about something if you did not have anything else to offer. That is definitely a pet peeve of mine for sure. I also love that Thompson again is answering potential reader questions about how and why they can't use maps or how and why they can't use the boom tube for transport options because they're going for subterfuge. Wow, subterfuge. I was about to go off on literacy again. I was just like, oh, the phonemes and the font, the phonology of subterfuge is interesting. Just the BT kind of becomes a PT. That's a linguistic change, anyways. But moving on, yes, because I think people are probably going to be like, why couldn't you just use this? But they're trying to get to the island quietly. And Wonder Woman is the reason why they're trying to avoid all that. And Wonder Woman has already been mentioned before that they can't ask for her help. So that's already come up. So, and Wonder Woman's been mentioned twice now in two issues. So, of course, you call upon her. It's kind of like Candyman. You call upon her, and Wonder Woman is about to appear, which we do, in fact, get. I also found it amusing that Harley changes giant quote, giant, she's about to say giant bitch to bisexual icon because Barda's about to probably smash her into a pulp for being disrespectful. And I think Wonder Woman is 100% a bisexual icon. So good on you, Harley, for speaking to the masses as well. I was actually a little surprised that Barda is admitting that she could maybe only push Wonder Woman in a fight. I would have thought she would be able to do a little bit more than that. I by no means do I think that she could take and defeat Wonder Woman in a fight, but I think that she'd be able to give her a little more trouble than just push her. And this is probably the most humble that I've ever seen Big Barda, to be honest. So, yeah, on a good day, depending on the weapons, depending on how angry she is. So, very interesting there. I like how Dinah says in this particular scene when they're in the Megalodon that if this plan fails, she's going to kill Harley. If it passes, then she'll thank Harley, and she is not sure exactly which version of that is worse. She, like any other decent human, right? She owns up to it. And she can't believe that it worked, but she's also going to give credit where credit is due and actually thanks Harley. And of course, Harley is very much, I think, used to being cowed by Dinah and is like, "Oh, I know you're telling me to shut up," but Dinah says, "Thank you." And this is, I think, great for team building. I think it's great for Harley, and I think it's also a great character moment for Dinah as well. And you can tell by the initial dot 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 that the ellipses there, the silence, that Harley is a bit surprised by this. Later on, actually, Dinah does psychoanalysis on Harley, which I found interesting. Harley Quinn write more often than you'd think. Oh, and actually, that's a great scene because Harley is talking about, I know how you cool Amazon girls like bondage fun, so maybe this will be a nice surprise when you wake up. And then Dinah says, Harley, don't tease the unconscious Amazons, it's gauche. And gauche, it's gauche. And this reminds me of what I had just read in Birds of Prey, where Helena is making fun of the bad guys that they were beating up at the union busting thing that they did. And Donna's like, don't do that when they're down, like let them stay down and have some dignity. And so I felt like, oh, wow, that's very similar to what Thompson is doing here. And then Harley continues and says, who's teasing? Their princess carries a literal lasso on her hip, and you think they're not into bondage? Come on. And so this is where Dinah does her psychoanalysis, but says about Harley, she doesn't really get the respect she deserves, probably because she makes it so difficult to get close to her. Is that by design or just one of the quirks she's not really in control of? I can certainly think of better role models for sin than Harley Quinn. Then again, I think of far worse role models. So an interesting character moment, because you kind of would wonder, why is Donna focusing on Harley at this point? Number one, I think because obviously they are the partnership, because everyone has split off into teams. So she is with Harley. So this makes sense that that's what she's thinking about. Number two, she has been against Harley from the get-go, really, and she's been like getting more open about the idea. And of course, she thanked her. And I think she is becoming less begrudgingly welcoming on the team and now maybe a little more welcoming. And I think it's good that we're seeing the development of Dinah's mind and how she views Harley. And then we kind of go into deficit language if we're using pedagogical terms, and the fact that, well, I don't really want sin around her. So as even though she might be warming to Harley and she's got her benefits, she still doesn't fully trust her. And of course, Harley is, yeah, what's exactly going on? And I think that Dinah's kind of looking at that. But it's interesting that she's just so focused on Harley and not necessarily other people, because I have more concern, frankly, about Zealot than I do Harley Quinn. So, yeah, we'll get to all of that. So, Dinah's setting off this plan. I had to read this a couple times just to figure out, because she says, I don't really care about the rest of us, about, how are we getting off the beach? But she makes it abundantly clear how important getting Sin off the island is. It does not matter what happens to everyone else so long as Sin and Bardo leaves, and everyone is, for the most part, in agreement with that. We then transition because Dinah seems to have bad situational awareness, because Zealot just leaves. She wasn't even in the team meeting, and we have this really weird situation where she slits her, sounds bad what I'm about to say, so I guess like trigger warning, but she slits her wrist, and then I don't know if there's any other way to say that. That's literally what she's doing. She sticks a worm in there and then literally rubs some dirt on it, but it's more like sand. I do like that, despite that looking pretty bad, especially if you might be triggered by suicide ideology, that Thompson again is able to, I think, cut the tension well, with the faces on this are drawn really well. And then Harley saying that now that's just not sanitary. But it's just like, what is going on here with Zealot? That's why I'm like, this one is the one that I would be worried about mostly. So She definitely, I think, is living up to her name, a zealot, right? Now this is the part. This is really the reason why I dock half a point off of the 10 out of 10, because this is the part of issue 2 and then this one that still just puzzles me. The fact that anyone thinks that anyone was going to kill an Amazon. Where did this come from? Why did people think that Amazons were going to die? And to such an extent that they don't believe Dinah when she says they're not going to die. Like literally the rest of this issue, they're knocking people out, putting them in chokeholds, so they're unconscious. But Zealot goes so far, she believes it so heartedly that she decides to do this weird thing right here. Even Maps points out that she didn't need to do this vow because the Amazons couldn't lay a hand on her when later they are beset upon by them. So I'm baffled by this. So this is why, like, it's just this detail and it has carried through. So issue 2, I thought we resolved it. It is back in issue 3. Obviously, Zealot's got a backstory. Again, I've admitted this each episode that I don't know Zealot's backstory. Apparently, she's really old. We find out here. That someone would go to this length, there's got to be a purpose. And so I think right now I'm looking at a tree. I'm so close to the tree, I can only see the bark. And so once I can see the whole tree as well as the forest, I think maybe it'll make sense. So that's why this will just be a 9.5. But once I realize or figure out what's going on here with this Amazon's might have been killed in this action, then I will come back and be like, okay, that deserved a 10 because now this makes sense. But I think it's one of those situations where it's just a detail that is not making sense right now. But I'm very hopeful that Thompson comes back and resolves this in the end. And there's some sort of reason why, because if it happens once, that could be an anomaly. If it happens twice, there's some purpose to it. And I think it needs to be addressed. Otherwise, it's a gun that is cocked and it could go off at any time and we don't know what's going on. Okay, so we will move on from that. She does, to prove her point for some reason. Again, this is not the person I trust this person the least. She runs this sword, her sword, through Harley Quinn to prove her point that she can't kill anybody, which seems unnecessary. And just because Harley didn't die doesn't mean she didn't feel that entire situation. And it's also interesting that Zealot says that she was as sure that she wouldn't die as Harley was that they weren't going to be digested by megalodons, which is interesting because I don't know that Harley was 100% sure. So either that means Zealot was okay killing somebody or killing Harley Quinn, or she was really sure and is just making maybe a sardonic joke in this case. So the team does split up. I think everyone works really well. Even there's this moment where Harley makes a joke and Dinah laughs about synchronized swimming because they're working well. We get this team that no one ever thought that we would need, but we need it so much. The Big Barda and cast team, I'm here for it. I want it to continue. And then we have this strange situation with Megara, and Megara is one of the three Furies in mythology, and I don't know if it's that one or it's just that's the name of this particular entity, but it does steal Barda's weapon, and I'm also not sure if this was how the Amazons are alerted to the presence of the birds on the island, because that's another question that I have. Gosh. Maps and Zealot, that is an interesting team. Seems to work out. And then, of course, you don't know. We do learn about Maps' power set and how she's able to teleport or use time travel. So that's specified. And then just that Zealot, still an enigma, is very old. We get a reunion with Dinah and Sin, and it seems so happy, and she's also confused. So I'm just thinking that this is probably one of those situations where we're gonna, in the next issue, talk about miscommunication, misunderstandings, that sort of thing. I mean, she seems fine. So let's see what happens in the next issue. And then in this last act, which is really well done and made me exceptionally nervous for all of this happening. We have presented in these final pages probably one of the most insane asks, most insane favors, the biggest favor that anyone could ask somebody else, not to mention a romantic partner. I mean, imagine your romantic partner asking you to distract Wonder Woman. I mean, love is not about keeping a record, but that is a huge favor. I don't know what Donna can do to repay Ollie. I think the way Ollie loves her probably won't ask for anything, but gee willikers. And this whole scene, which again, I was just nervous about it. I mean, looking at Dinah, she's not happy for good reason. Ollie is pooping in his pants. She's coming after him. She's pretty lethal. She's holding back, but saying, like, give me an excuse and I will keep it going. Um, and then we have her lording over him, and then of course in the final bit. But this whole scene reminds me of times in the animated series where someone could be Superman, could be Wonder Woman, is under some sort of control, and it's just absolutely scary because you're like, how are we going to take this person down? Or even depending on if you like it or not, I think it's still a good scene in Scott Snyder's Justice League where after Superman awakes and awakens after he awakens, yes, or wakes up. After he awakens and goes after the whole league, and you're like, "Ooh, this is not good." But even that last page, I mean, the fury of Wonder Woman for sure. I am guessing that these magic arrows that are duds were what Dinah got from Constantine, but she definitely needs her money back for sure. And I guess I didn't mention this before, but I think that weird worm in the box might have been what Zealot was looking for when she went to that kind of upside down verse as well. So little details that aren't necessarily pointed out to us, but I think you have to pay attention. I don't know if that's for good or for ill, the fact that you kind of have to make a leap maybe to be like, oh, well, they got that. The arrows are explained via dialogue, but it's not nothing about that worm, but it's not like Zealot would really tell us anyway. So that's kind of in character. The butterfly arrow seems to work, as we can see here, which is actually very beautiful, but I don't really understand or know how she gets reconstituted. I mean, what does this do? Butterflies have such a short lifespan. Do we gather them together and put them, or I don't know. How did she get back together basically? And basically immediately, because he's like, you got no time, and then even the title says the mascara way too soon. So yeah, bona fortuna birds, because I don't know how you're going to deal with this. So like I said, tentative 9.5 out of 10 birds. Loved it. Love the art. Love the humor. I feel like it's appropriate, as well as cutting some tension. I still have some questions, mainly in regards to killing Amazons and what this point is and what we're trying to say. And now, yeah, we'll see what happens. And fingers crossed that we don't have the superhero trope of fighting without having a discussion. Because she wanted to have a discussion with Ollie, and Ollie was the one who was just like trying to distract her. So she was trying to break that trope. Wonder Woman was. But yes, we shall see. Okay, I shall stop the share. And my last section should be my literature recommendations. And I've got some caveats on this one, but let's see here. I think I did there, maybe not. I guess people we meet on vacation. So I was recently looking for some more indigenous representation, both in authorship as well as stories, and found recommended there by Tommy Orange, which was pretty good. And it followed several different characters lead in the past, leading up to, and then during a large gathering of indigenous people, and there's going to be a robbery at this particular place, and I thought that was pretty good. Still on the lookout for more. If you have any recommendations of indigenous representation, please let me know. Of course, I have read Firekeeper's Daughter, See, that's how bad. Like I can't even I don't know. I just think that's really terrible. It like partially is my fault, but I also think that we just there's a dearth of representation with indigenous people in literature and really I think in films too, because films tend to use Hispanic people for indigenous roles. And so I think it's getting better, but yeah, I would like more. So I definitely need to do more research about that. Read Page Boy by Elliot Page, which I highly recommend. I will say that the reason why I didn't give it 5 out of 5, because typically I do for memoirs, and I read it, listened to it on an audiobook, is that I did not like the organization of the memoir. It really bounced around from young Elliot to Elliot, like on either side of coming out. So being in the closet, coming out, and then after, and then Elliot is Elliot, so undergoing or becoming a trans man and then a man. And it just hops around and I was listening obviously, but it's not like there were headers of like da 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 da. You had to figure out as he's reading, what time period we are in. Yeah, so that would be my only critique, but at least it wasn't critique on subject matter, it's more, organization. The Salt Path by Rainer Wynn, which is a memoir about this couple that lose their house and then they end up in England going on a trip. I mean, there's nowhere else they can go, so they just keep walking. And the husband he's been diagnosed with something that's basically a death sentence. So it's kind of he gets a bit better. The doctor says like you made it worse by doing this, but he seems a bit better. But yeah, just natural aspects, of course, a book about travel and walking slash hiking I find interesting, especially a place that I don't know as much of. And then kind of the social attitudes of homelessness and what's that like and how are they received or judged, things like that. Inquisitor, Rise of the Red Blade by Delia S. Dawson, I recommend. And that starts as a Padawan. And really, I think the first section is really episode 2. And then, of course, it goes through Order 66 and then a little bit after. And then the last two, I've read one, and the other one I will soon finish. Verity by Colleen Hoover, and It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. So I am only saying the titles because I actually want to caution you against reading them. I love romances. I think I'm always reading a romance along with something else. I have read erotica depending on like what the scale is. And Verity, I will say the plot was interesting. I don't consider Colleen Hoover the strongest writer in terms of like sentence structure and maybe world building, even like understanding who the main character is because it's first person or what she looks like, things like that, like little things I have an issue with. But it number one, I have never read about so many blowjobs as I had in that book. I think at most, maybe if it's a het romance, one. There were so many graphic. I mean, someone's getting choked by the member. I mean, I could become. I'll just stop there. I was texting Donovan about this. I was texting Harry. I was sending it to Ellie because Ellie was the one who lent me those two books. And I'm like, is she all the rage? She's like, I have two. You can read them. She didn't remember them, so I'm taking pictures of these sections and sending them to her. And she's like, oh, it's worse than I remember. I didn't know that was in there. I'm like, well, you'll pay for this, Ellie. You'll pay for this. But just seems like, on the verge. It seemed violent, on the verge of trigger warning, rape. And I have concerns with ideas of what romance and partnership look like, be, given the fact that people love these books, right? So she's a popular author. So this is being consumed by many people. And I just wonder, like, oh, are women, we'll just say generalized, are they getting kind of the wrong idea? Or, I mean, is this unhealthy? I have more concerns, I think, when it comes to young adults. I'm hoping that adults have better formed ideas. But at the same time, I had friends who are now married. One person that I can recall talking to me where she wouldn't read romances and wouldn't read or wouldn't watch romance films because it kind of put her mind in a place that wasn't healthy because she didn't have that. And so she was kind of coming up with these fantastical ideas, or maybe falling down a rabbit hole. And um, I feel like that's, potentially a good decision. Like if you're able to separate yourself from the fiction, I think that's great. But if you are one who really gets in deep with it, which I certainly do, like I have been emotionally affected by like The Nightingale by Kristen Harris or Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Um, then, I caution you. I mean, this was definitely stuff that I'm not at all thinking, "Oh, wow, this is this how it's supposed to be? Should I be looking for this?" But I was definitely texting Donovan being like, "Is this normal that someone is choking and gagging?" So things like that. It ends with us, if possible, and I will say with Verity, if you're wondering, I'm the letters. I choose the letters. I think if you honestly, I'm going to call you out. If you're choosing manuscript, it's because you want yourself to feel better, about cheering on some of these characters. But I think letter is where it's at. I could give you evidence of why I believe it's letters, and I think everyone should be held accountable for what happened there. So calling you out, manuscript people. But anyways, it ends with us. I think, if possible, is worse than Verity because very rapey feel. Chapter 1, I was reading, I when I read this, because I've it's actually good speed read practice, which I'm pretty good at speed reading, but this is great, because of the sort of more simplistic writing. I can just get through 100 pages in like 45 to an hour. um yeah, I read it kind of with a scowl on my face, with my hand on my forehead. And then abuse has already happened. I figured it was going to happen given the father. It's happened once. She said you only get one next time you're out of here, and I thought you shouldn't even give him that one. I think it's only going to get worse. The only reason you're probably asking, why are you keeping on reading? And I just want to finish it. And also, I hold out hope for this other guy, Atlas, because once he came into the picture physically, not from the journal she's been writing, I thought, okay, I see where this is going. Please let it happen. So we need to get rid of this other guy. I had never liked him. Ugh. Oh, so I really actually do not recommend reading Colleen Hoover. If you are a Colleen Hoover fan, first of all, tell me manuscript or letter, and also give me your reasons for your claim. But also, I guess I would like to hear, yeah, why you like them. I'm always open to hearing contrary thoughts or thoughts contrary to my own. But I do just caution you, and please do not look at these what's going on in here as the picture of an ideal relationship or something that you should look for. Okay. Well, there you go. Um, I think that's it. Sorry, I was thinking about something else. A student came in, I was subbing for somebody, and she came in to talk about some personal problems. And I had known this student because I had subbed for her several times last year. And so she was chatting with me, and I was just asking, I knew the other person involved. And I was just asking some questions and not getting into too much detail because obviously, she doesn't really know me or trust me. But just like, oh, just trying to da 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 da. So just asking questions, trying to suss out what was going on. And she turned to me and said, wow, you're really good at this, you know? Do you have like a psychology bent? And I'm like, no, no, it's just like working with teens. You know, I taught for 10 years Covenant. And she asked if, those kids are having a hard time. And I said, well, really anyone is having a hard time. It doesn't seem like it, but they sure do. And yeah, she just thought I had sort of a guidance background, which it was great to hear. I guess I'm just so used to asking questions, and digging in deeper and seeing what's going on, that seems normal to me. So it was shocking that it was shocking for her. But yeah, I was just thinking about kind of that and whether people take my advice or not. But it's a caveat. I mean, obviously, you all can do what you want. I'm just trying to look out for you. And since I did the dirty work, I'm trying to speak to you with honesty and uh, with that experience. So okay. Well, anyways, you can send any questions or comments to backrolltheoracle@gmail.com, like the show on Facebook, or follow it on Twitter at Backroll to Oracle. Subscribe to the show on YouTube for an uncut version, where you also get to see the comic panels. Follow the Batman Universe on Facebook and Twitter as well, and support the Batman Universe by subscribing to Patreon. Once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Backroll the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. And until next time, fly on, Bats lovers.